Belgian authorities identified the two airport suicide attackers, saying they were both Belgian citizens and brothers. UN Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, says the main takeaway from the attack in Brussels is that the war in Syria must be put to an end. And presidential hopefuls Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are victorious in the Arizona primaries, but their rivals, Republican Ted Cruz and Democrat Bernie Sanders, win both Idaho and Utah. Good morning and thanks for joining us at I-24 News. I'm Benjamin Tjong Alfalas. We begin in Belgium, where an extensive manhunt that started last night in the wake of the bombings claimed by the Islamic State continues. The identity of the two airport attackers is now known. They were identified as brothers Khaled and Ibrahim El Bakraoui and were both Belgian citizens. Belgian authorities released pictures of the two suicide attackers dressed in black, pushing trolleys through the terminal, and said they were actively searching for a third, dressed in white, whose bomb failed to go off. They believe the third suspect is Najim Lahraoui, who police say is the main accomplice helping Paris attacker Salah Abdeslam with the November Paris attacks. Belgium raised its terror alert to its maximum level of 4, following the attacks at the Zaventem airport and the Maalbeek metro station, which killed at least 35 people and wounded hundreds more. Joining us now from Brussels is our correspondent Jonathan Sancher-Doughty. Jonathan, the identity of the two airport attackers was released, indicating that they were both Belgian citizens and brothers. What implications does this have?
Of course, the knowledge that these two are brothers and Belgian citizens means that we are once again looking at a situation of jihadis from Europe carrying out attacks on Europe. These people are likely to have trained in the the Middle East, with Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, bringing back that specialist knowledge of how to carry out terrorist attacks here. We now know that ISIS is able to build these complex bombs from materials that you can buy over the counter in a pharmacy here, and we now know that they also have these networks still operating. The fact that they're brothers is also interesting, of course, because it reinforces that knowledge that the intelligence services already had, that ISIS relies on tight-knit groups, communities of friends or even family, to keep the confidentiality of their mission and also to keep the plot secret from those intelligence services who are constantly trying to foil the next attack.
Now, Jonathan, how certain can we be that the third suspect was indeed Najim Lahraoui, and what are authorities doing to track him down?
Well, there is a massive manhunt going on across Brussels and Europe at large. This is because they don't want the situation to repeat itself that we had after those Paris attacks in November, where it took 4 months to find their man. This time they want to catch him sooner, and it's definitely important that they manage to do that, not just so that people here in Brussels have more confidence in the ability of those security services to look after their protection and safety, but also because the longer these people are at large, the deeper they can go into hiding, the more they can plan, and we know for a fact that they are planning more attacks. During those raids that took place in the last 24 hours, they did find more explosives. They found that bomb packed with nails and chemicals. They found the ISIS flag. So it is known that this is a race against time before the next attack should take place, and it's vital that they find that culprit who they've shown in that still from the CCTV footage dressed in white.
Jonathan Sancher-Doughty, thank you for reporting to us from Brussels with more on the latest terror attack. Now, ABC News has more on the Brussels attacks in the aftermath in the following report.
Tonight, Brussels is under darkness as ongoing raids continue across the European country. The manhunt for this man, who authorities have now identified as a suspect in the airport attacks. Investigators say it all started around 8 a.m. Tuesday morning. 2 bombs exploding. The terminal filled with smoke, chaos, people frantically running for safety.
Big bang, everybody cried and came along here. We saw kind of smoke, you know.
The force so great, ceilings collapsed, people lying on top of one another. And the horror continued. 9:11 a.m., just an hour after the airport explosions, 7 miles away, another suicide bomb goes off near the offices of the European Union. The target, a packed metro car. Children screaming in fear.
It's the first time I saw such a thing in my life.
The aftermath leading to hundreds of injuries, among those 9 Americans, including Mormon missionaries Richard Norby, Joseph Empey, and Mason Wells, all seriously hurt. With Brussels now under siege back in the States, law enforcement officials are beefing up security at major transportation hubs across America, including in New York City, a top target.
There remains no credible and specific threat against New York City.
Here, a city in mourning, and signs of solidarity, messages of hope and condolences.
Well, the UN Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, said the message from the attacks in Brussels claimed by Islamic State was that the war in Syria had to end and a political transition needed to be found so that the focus could turn to tackling the group in Europe and elsewhere.
The message we are drawing out of it: we need to extinguish the fire of war in Syria. We need to find a political solution. We need a political transition in Syria in order to be able to make sure that we can all concentrate, and the Syrians can all together concentrate on what is the real danger of everyone in Europe, in the world, in Syria and elsewhere. That's the message, apart from the message of sadness, of horror, and of solidarity, this time to the Belgian people and to the people of this beautiful city of Brussels, which is considered morally the capital of Europe.
New York's One World Trade Center lit up last night in a show of solidarity following the suicide bomb attacks in Brussels. The coordinated assault triggered security alerts across Europe and drew global expressions of support. 4 days after Brussels police had captured the prime surviving suspect in Islamic State's attacks in Paris last November, in which 130 people were killed. We go now to the U.S. presidential campaign trail as presidential hopefuls Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump overwhelmed their rivals in the Arizona primaries on Tuesday. Trump defeated his main rival, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, in Arizona, taking all 58 of its delegates. But Cruz was victorious in the Utah caucus, taking all 40 delegates, and in Idaho, taking 20 out of 32 delegates. Democratic opponent Senator Bernie Sanders, meanwhile, defeated Clinton in both Idaho and Utah, taking 78 and 74% of the votes.
The United States has to offer whatever help we can to Belgium and the other European countries, but we have to work closely together with our friends and our allies, and we have to form coalitions of nations willing to defeat ISIS with us. And so when I think about what we have to do, I see the challenge ahead as one where we're bringing the world together, where we are leading the world against these terrorist networks, whereas some of my opponents want to build walls and shut the world off. Well, you tell me, how high does the wall have to be to keep the internet out?
The Volkswagen emissions scandal that led to a number of shareholders seeking hundreds of millions of euros in restitution from the company may end in consolation, a German lawyer said. A total of 278 institutional shareholders sued Volkswagen in a German court for misleading U.S. regulators about their emissions using engine control software. The shareholders seek compensation of more than 3.2 billion euros due to a plunge in their shares. It is the first time Volkswagen has been sued for such a large compensatory sum in Germany since the disclosure of its emissions scandal in September 2015.
It is eventually decided by the courts that Volkswagen violated its obligations. The shareholders' loss will be calculated. However, the whole process will be difficult. So the law firm delegating the lawsuit has stated in public documents that it hopes that Volkswagen will conciliate with them. So I think eventually it's heading towards a conciliation instead of a verdict, because the verdict will take too long and both sides are at risk of losing the case.
Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said today he would establish a clean energy innovation fund worth about $762 million in an effort to combat climate change.
And we are establishing a new $1 billion clean energy innovation fund. And what that is going to do is every year invest $100 million in the smartest, most cutting-edge Australian clean energy technologies and businesses to ensure that we not only drive jobs and innovation in Australia, but also play our part in cracking the very hard problems, the challenging technical difficulties that we face in terms of reducing emissions.
That's all for now. Thank you for watching.